Welcome to the Book Club interview with your host, Scott Hollister, a show that empowers you to discover your best self through a deep understanding and review of books dedicated to self-improvement and business.
All right, welcome to the Book Club interview. My name is Scott Hollister, your host. Today's guest is Chris Prefontaine. Chris, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Awesome. Thanks for being on today. So you have a new book you want to tell us about?
Yeah, New Rules of Real Estate. I actually co-authored it with my son, Nick, and son-in-law, Zach. So pretty cool ad there compared to the last book a few years ago. And then it's 24 leading experts sharing some cool advice. That the subtitle includes all of them. And what we did is over the last, 7 years or so, buying and selling on our own, just the relationships that we forged. And as you probably gathered from the book, I'm open to all avenues of real estate. I'm not so naive to think we're the only game in town. So we do expose the reader to all different niches so they can get a taste, touch, and feel,
Of course. Yeah, I love that. I've read a couple of different books in my past where they've kind of written a chapter about the best real estate advice ever. And I just love that because you get to pick the brains of some of the best out there. So I love the format. Now, before we get into that, so a little bit about your history. I was reading in the Real Estate on Your Terms, kind of about your past, and it sounded like you started in residential real estate as an agent and kind of created your own brokerage, if I got that right.
That was in the middle. So before that, we built homes, mostly single family in the early 90s. And then I bought the brokerage somewhere around 94 or 5. And then I ended up selling that ultimately to Coldwell Banker in 2000. And then from there started doing our own deals, number one, and then coaching around United States and Canada, so all over North America. But that led to the lovely 2008 debacle. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yep. That's interesting. So how'd you get into the home building business?
I grew up in a family business that had zero to do with real estate other than my father would buy his own, build and or buy his own buildings to support the business. So I was around it kind of peripheral. And then
Yep.
he was looking to sell around 91-ish and asked if I wanted to stay on board, and he wouldn't sell, or did I want to do my own thing? And I had just started tinkering with a builder buddy of mine where I would pre-market some homes on vacant land, and he'd build them. And so that started to take off for us. So I went and ran on that track for a while, and that's how it started us in real estate.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And did you get your license just to help out with the business, or is it kind of?
No, funny. So as a builder, as you probably know, builders and realtors not always like on the same page. So as a builder, I was definitely not, I it was nothing wrong, but I wasn't realtor friendly, right? I was just kind of on the other side of the fence. And then when things slowed down and we decided to pivot business-wise, I then went and got my license and became an agent for someone for, I think it was a year, whatever the requirement was. And then I did my own, broker owner for a franchise. So no, it was not originally. The whole building route was non-licensed, and I'm not licensed now. It's just in between that I was a broker owner for a while.
Now, what did you enjoy doing better, building houses or being an agent at that time?
I enjoyed the building and the deal structuring, which is all I do now to this day. And that was kind of I like the experience in a realtor. I think I learned a lot as far as deal structure and things like that. But I also thought when I was a broker owner, and no offense to agents out there, but it was literally like an adult daycare. Like it was just too hands-on for me, not my style.
Yeah, no, I've heard that a few times about creating your own brokerage. You got to be good at managing people, and it starts to turn into more of a job than a business. It's definitely a tough path. But was it always the goal to sell that, build it and sell it, or just kind of fall into that?
It actually was. I set a 5-year goal and we nailed it within 6 months or so. But I remember people saying to me, well, you can't you have a franchise. You can't sell a business as a realtor. And we had not huge. We had like 14 agents. And then my little team did like 100 homes a year. So really what the Coldwell Banker, when they bought us, was looking for market share. They wanted all those deals that we were doing, and they wanted the few agents. So they sucked us into their local office.
Nice. Was it a good feeling to sell that?
Yeah, it was cool because at the time it was a big, I won't say a windfall, but for me at that age, let's say I would have been still in my late 20s. So that was a big deal to even go through a sale and a due diligence process and all that stuff. And then to obviously have the wire into the account, that was a neat experience.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, after that, what'd you decide to do, leading up to the crash?
Well, I mean, I was doing my own deals. So we were doing, at the time, the market was red hot. So we were doing condominium conversions where we'd buy a 4 or a 6, pretty common, sometimes a 2, unit building, get the condo docs done from the engineer, get the condo docs done from the attorney, and then sell off individual units. Those were selling like hotcakes back then. And then I was also coaching clients throughout US and Canada. And at that time, those are realtors. They weren't investing clients like we do now. And most of them were realtors, high end, like $1 million producers that just needed to become more efficient. And then when the crash happened, I'll give you one project. There was a 6-unit building. 2 or 3 units had sold. Like we bought the whole building for, I don't know, it was $500,000, put a couple $100,000 into it. But these units were selling all day long for like almost 200,000. And then when the crash, we sold 3. And then when the crash happened, literally we couldn't sell them for a third in that particular city. That's quite a crash.
Yeah.
So it was crazy.
Yeah. No, that's quite the real estate crash of '08. And I got to see it firsthand as well. And so going through that, you had a pretty intimate story in the book. And I love the details that you had, because I think for someone to learn, during a time like that, something that tests you, um, that's the biggest takeaway. So what are your, biggest lessons learned during that time?
Well, a couple things, and I think what you said is important. By the way, I'll preface it with that because there's just too many things that can happen in real estate, and I see too many people, and some really good quality people, but I see too many people that are trying to coach now or are coaching now and have never been through any cycles, and that can get scary if you're the student, because how are you going to navigate that if and when it happens? So lessons that I can look back on now would be exactly how, what, where, and why we do what we do now in our new business, which is do not sign personally on bank loans for your real estate deals, in my opinion. So in other words, you're not taking out bank financing conventionally. There's just no reason to do that, and we can talk about how to do it instead. And then not borrowing from private investors, believe it or not. We don't borrow money to do deals. We do everything on terms. And it was all because of the lessons learned, to your question, in '08. That's what sparked all that. It was to the point where I almost said, all right, forget real estate. Like I just need a sabbatical or a break or something. Instead, we said, let's re-engineer the thing. Let's re-engineer this entire process to not do all those things that stung us. Over leveraged properties, bank loans, 20%, just the conventional stuff that everybody thinks you have to do.
Mm. Yeah, it was interesting. I saw that in your book, real estate on your terms. I'd love to dive into that, and I I can line it back up to why you do that now is from what you've learned. So it's just interesting to see, make that connection and see
Mm.
that. So what's your favorite type of deal structure, post '08 that you like to?
Well, for us now, I'll tell you what we like now, and then I'll tell you what I think the new person, because I've been, I started fresh back in like 2012, 13. The best deal for us now is a longer term owner financing deal, and I'll go even deeper niched. The owner financing means a lot of things to a lot of people. We look for free and clear properties, so the owner has no debt. And then we look to structure a long-term deal where most or all of that term has our monthly payment going to principal only. So no interest, principal
Mhm.
only. So you are literally becoming as close to recession resistant as you can. I'll never say recession proof, but this model is super recession resistant because every month you're paying down principal on these owner financing deals. You're not just marking the property up to resell it. You're pounding principal down. So over the course of even 2 years, let alone 3, 4, or 5, you're just hammering that loan down. So I love those type of deals. I'll give you some math, Scott. If you do an owner financing deal and you do at least a 48-month term, and that house is around 200 grand or higher, with the 3 paydays we create, you just created a 6-figure deal for yourself. One deal, 6 figures. So that's why I like those for obvious reasons.
Mhm.
For the new person, and when I started, I like the lease purchase because we have $10 built into the agreement. That's your money up front. There's no title transferring. It's just very simple, very risk averse, and no money down. And so that's super important for the new person that might be listening.
Hmm. So you're not taking title with that, but you are taking title with the owner financing, right? So you get
Yeah.
depreciation and all the tax benefits.
Yeah, and the reason I should have said the connect, why I said the second one is only $10 down. Well, the first one is no money down either, owner financing. But when you put no money down with a seller, I've not once had a seller say, "Oh, great, let me come out of pocket for my transfer tax. You're not putting anything down." No, you got to. So we pay transfer tax if it's applicable in the particular state, and any other fees they might have incurred as a seller in a normal transaction. We take care of
Hmm.
those because we're not putting anything down. We're giving them a nice price. That's why they do it, but we're not putting any money down. So that's why I said when you knew, if you don't have cash flow, you don't want to be grabbing a bunch of those deals and paying people's transfer tax. You can go grab a whole bunch of these purchases very easily.
Hmm. And some of the common, questions I have definitely from, more sophisticated and, sellers, if they own the property outright, is, that depreciation. Let's say they owned it for a while. So, if that's one of, the conflicts that come up or the objections from the seller, how do you handle that one?
As far as you said, depreciation.
Yeah, the recapture for them is the seller.
Well, I mean, I haven't got, believe it or not, a lot of sellers don't bring up the depreciation. What if they've got that thing depreciated way down for, for a cost basis?
Yep.
Then they actually prefer to have the terms, a lot of them, so that they can kind of kick the can down the road, or at least put these tax payments on an ongoing plan instead of getting whacked all at once. So I haven't got much pullback from that. What I found is that with the owner financing, whether it's ego or pride or what it is, most sellers want their price, period. And most sellers will go out on your term as long as you give them the price. So let me give you an example. Say you're a seller and you said, I want 300 grand for my house. Uh, if you'll go out 4 or 5 years or more, I don't mind paying a teeny bit over that. So you're going to get a premium on the property, especially if I'm paying principal pay down, because, picture it, 3 or 4 months, 5 months maybe of payments. I just sucked up any premium I gave you. And now I'm hammering down the base principal. So all that to say, they like that. They feel like they're getting their price or more as long as they give us the term. We can do that. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, and it brings me back to one of my, mentors back in the day. He had this saying, and he probably heard it from way back. But he's like, you can either pay the price, or you could choose the terms, but you can't have both. So is
Yeah.
that kind of the same line?
Yeah, it is. Like they'll say,
Yeah.
I want a little money down. And so that is an objection we get, by the way. And
Hmm.
so we'll say, okay, great. But Scott, we usually don't pay money down and your full price. I can give you a price, which is more important. And if someone says, well, no, I need my cash now, I got to go, do something else with it, then we're not a fit. But if they are okay with, foregoing some cash now until the end of the term, or in this case, over time, then that's great. It's a good fit for both parties. It's a win-win.
That's awesome. So do you pay a certain percentage over, let's say the appraised amount? So that house is worth, 200 today. Do you find yourself typically going a little bit over and paying that premium just to get the terms you want?
No, good question. Not unless we have to and we love the deal, but no,
Hmm.
typically not. Typically, I'll go in and say something like this, like we have a deal now that it's got extended several times. So what started as a 4-year deal has now grown to like a 21-year deal. But when we started, I said to him, it was a seller who had liquidated his dad's estate. He had his own property left and he was ready to leave the state. We literally put the deal together in 2 days so he could leave. And I said to him, "What do you think you would have got?" I think he was on for like 219, low end house. What do you think you would have got if your realtor sold? They didn't, it's expired. But if they sold, by the time you got an offer and then haggled on price and then paid the realtor, what do you think you would have netted? He said 183.9. I said, okay, that's what I'll pay you. So you didn't get that, but I'm going to pay you as if you did get that. So we try to, let them talk themselves into that number. And so a 219 house in the market, we got for 183.9 owner financing. There's a ton of money in that deal.
That's awesome. Now, are you mailing to those expired lists, or what's your favorite, marketing list that you like to purchase or,
Okay,
get
depends
leads?
on, yeah, this is good because it depends on like we're in different pockets around the country, right? We have our own deals in New England and then we have deals with students all around North America. So it just depends on what pocket that market's going through right now, or what stage that's going through. Example, if a market's red hot, like one of our DC students, are there going to be many for sale by owners? No, they're selling. So there might be some more, there might be expireds though. So that might be the focus for that market. If the market's flat, kind of just like no growth, like out in Pennsylvania, one of our students, been that way since, ever since like 2012, the same. It just doesn't change much where he is. While FISBOs and expireds are great, we don't mail as much as we'll have virtual assistants or our own team call. So we're usually doing phone work for that initial, or someone is doing it for us. And that's why I said the virtual assistants. So it's the expireds, the FSBOs, and the for rent by owners are a great, great source of leads in every market.
It's awesome. So post crash to now, what's been your bread and butter for lead source, and then how has it changed over the years?
Those three started and maintain our bread and butter. So FSBO expired for rent by owner, and then we will now and again, if the leads in any given market are slower, they're drying up a little bit, we may kind of go against our norm and spend a little money on a mailing to free and clear homes, because as I alluded to earlier, those are great owner financing deals. And so those don't change. What changes is which one will focus on more or less if the market's up, sideways, or down.
Mm, interesting. No, I love that. I love the different options, you know? So where did the passion come from, to become a coach, and why, navigate from that? So you said you started with coaching real estate agents
Yep.
and now you're coaching investors?
Yeah, so we started buying and selling on terms, and I don't think consciously there ever was a thought to let's start tomorrow coaching people. What happened was we live on an island. Newport, Rhode Island is on a three-town island. It's called the Quinnipiac Island, and on that island is a war college. So you have Navy students there. Someone had heard about what I was doing for deals, said, "Look, I've done 3 tours to Afghanistan, I think it was. I'm going back to live in Ohio with my family to civilian life, and I want you to teach me." So I taught him. I mean, he was literally in my office, and then he referred me to some people. And long story short, within 12 months, we had all kinds of people coming to us saying, I want to learn this. Like, this is unique because of the nature of easy entry, little to no money down, because of the no bank loans and no credit needed. I didn't have any after the crash. Because of all that, it spread fast. And so we started coaching, and then that became a pretty core business where my son-in-law, Zach, and my son Nick, and a great team around us grow that now all over North America. And I'll tell you that it's hard unless you've gone through coaching. It's hard for people to understand. Well, why would you take the time to do that? Well, 2 reasons. One, we're not about selling coaching or selling product. We do deals with our students. So that's a key differentiator in the marketplace. We actually get in the trenches and do deals and revenue share with them. So we have an inherent reason to be totally vested in their interest. And secondly, when you coach, you have to be sharp. Like, your fingers on the pulse. You learn at a rapid pace because you're coaching. It's rewarding because you're learning at a rapid pace and helping someone else succeed. There's just a whole new level mentally and psychologically that you get to enjoy when you get to that coaching level. And our coaches, we have certified coaches now, they say it. They say, wow, it's improved my own business, because you got to be sharp. You got to be on the cusp.
Mm. And you said you worked with your family. So how has that, evolved over the years, and who you have on your staff now?
Yeah, what's neat, everyone says, well, what'd you do? Did you like design a plan and put everybody in place? And I wish I could say it did that, but it was even easier because it happened organically. Nick, my son, started helping me very, very passively. He was a realtor, and he was like, I got some time. And I said, well, I don't know this online stuff. Can you kind of, like, when I get properties, can you post them to sell, to rent, to own buyers? And here's what you do. And I set him up to do that. And that was probably sometime at the end of 13. By the end of 14, he became full-time. So he was my buyer specialist. And then non-family member came in as an assistant. And then around the end of 15, Kayla, my daughter, and Zach, my son-in-law, who's now COO, he's become a major part of the company. They were in the, he was a personal trainer, and they were both bartenders, because in our area with tourists, it's very lucrative. The lifestyle stinks, but you make really good cash. So they were 5 years into that and tired of it, and at the end of 15, and said, is there any room in the company? I said, well, I don't know. There's no salaries. You can come in, we'll do deals and see how it goes. Well, they did. Zach actually very quickly, by a year later, had replaced me with our buying, and handles all the buying now with sellers. We go out and acquire properties. Kayla became, back then, before having kids, the general manager of everything we do. And it's just grown organically since then. Nobody kind of wants each other's roles. It works great. Kayla's backed off a little bit now. They just had their second child, so our second grandchild. But Zach's become, as I said, a major role, and recently became COO in the company, and coaches a lot of the high-end people with me.
That's cool. How's it working with family? Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, people say, okay, come on now, how the heck do you make decisions, and is there conflict? I'll tell you, it's very simple. When, as a team, not me dictating it, as a team, we came up with a mission, and then 5 or 6, now it's 5 values that we're going to operate on. So when the decision comes up, family or not, because we have a big team now growing, it's not anyone's opinion. There's 5 values. Does it align with the values and the mission? If not, it's not a go. And I'm talking about even students, Scott. We've said no to students who want to pay us if they didn't align with our values and our mission. And so that blows some people's minds. Like, why would you do that? Because we need to stay true to our mission and our values. And then so as a family, it's easy to make decisions that way.
Nice. I love that. Send up your values and living by them.
Yep.
Quality. Um, Now I'd like to circle back. Certain, it kind of piqued my interest. I love seller finance deals. I think that's, a win-win if you can, create the best deal terms for both parties, right? I know it's hard to do, but in your let's say percentage of deals, how many of those ones are you offering interest? If you can't get that strike price, are you
Um,
are you
we just started offering interest just like this year, last year. We're into a new year here, because we used it as a technique to take a 4 or 5 year principal only deal and say, look, Scott, if you'll extend it 10 years, 15 years, we'll add in 4.5% interest. We did that on several. So that 4-year deal that became a 21-year deal was because we called them up and said, hey, I know you've been getting principal only, we'll add the interest. But that literally was like the first one. And then we bought our office building a little over a year ago, and he was very conventional, older gentleman, very successful in real estate, wanted 5.2%. No, it was actually 5.3% interest. He actually advertised that. So we bought the building. I said, well, I can't just do that, but I understand his logic. So what we did is we structured all principal up front for about 9 months. Like, we hammered principal down, and then we amortized the balance at like a little under what he wanted, like 5.1. So we both won. We both felt like, okay, cool. I got a hammered down principal right away that I wouldn't even get over a course of 3 years on a conventional loan. And then he got his interest after that. So those are far and few between. We just started doing that. But if the deal's a killer deal, it's all math. We'll do it if we get the right term.
correct? Now, in that deal structure, you said the 4 that turns into a 21. Are you, with that 4-year term, is that the balloon, and then you're calling back and saying, hey, you've gotten principal, would you like to extend it? Is that kind of how you'd stay in a short-term deal and longer term?
Yeah, and that also has to be coupled with our exit, though. You said it perfectly, but let's say my tenant buyer in the home in month 40 is very successful and cashes the deal out. Well, obviously I didn't get to extend it, and that's great because the buyer wins too and we move on. But in this particular case, the buyer was having a little bit of trouble. Instead of us saying you're out in the street, we said, well, let's see what we can do. We went back to the seller, pushed the term way out, went back to the buyer and said, hey, good news, no stress, take your time. They were just ecstatic because they thought they were going to leave. So it just depends on both sides of the deal and what's going to be a win-win.
Hmm. That's amazing. So I've got a question. So if you can negotiate great terms, are you that adverse to signing personally on a loan? Or, with today's low interest rates, and if you get a long, fixed rate loan with Fannie or Freddie, are you taking that deal, or are you just kind of
No.
off personally signing?
No, I can tell you, under no circumstances in other than my personal residence will I do that, and would I tell my students to do it? Like, under no circumstances.
That's interesting. I love hearing different approaches, right? I think if you can, just be a student of everything and learn everything is about financing and real estate and deals, you can kind of, put together creative deals. I love that. So it's just, I've never heard anybody say that,
Yeah, well, it's personality too, right? So if somebody,
Yeah.
I know a ton of people on my podcast and friends that'll go, wow, money's cheap. I'll just go out and get whatever the maximum is that I can get on FHA loans or whatever the program might be. Great. But I can sleep better at night knowing that I'm not on those, because if the market turns or something happens to the house or there's a lawsuit, doesn't matter what the headache is. Those headaches happen in life and in real estate. And when those happen, the banks come in one place. They don't care what the market did. They don't care that you weren't responsible for the national market. They care about one thing, getting their money back. And whose signature's on there? You. So they're going to come to you. And now if you have a family, you just jeopardize all your family's assets. And in my opinion, that's not a good sleeping tool. So I just don't do it. But hey, if other people are okay with sleeping with that headache potentially happening, then that's good for them. But I've already been down that channel. So I've been down that road rather. So no more.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's lessons learned will, shape your future. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's great. So are you doing the seller financing to to increase your rental portfolio? Or are you doing, lease options and passing that deal forward as well? What's
A
your
little bit of a mix now, Scott. So we carry at any one time 50 or 60 properties, not counting students, and in that portfolio are cash out dates with tenant buyers anywhere from 1 year to 5 years. Also in that portfolio is a small mix of, say, 3, 4, and 5 unit, maybe 6 unit buildings, 2 or 3 of them. Also in there are some singles where maybe we said, oh, we got an initial long term at the beginning. Let's rent it for a while. Then we'll do it. Then before we have to exit, we'll do a rent own. So there's different concoctions in there. And then sometimes we'll take a sandwich lease deal, and we'll gain some rapport and respect and credibility from the seller. And then a year into, say, a 3 or 4 year term, we'll call them up and attempt to buy that subject to the existing financing or owner financing. So again, all kind of combinations that you can do with these types of deals, kind of to your point, that once you understand it and you can navigate it, you can engineer almost anything.
That's great. So you mind if we take a deep dive in one of your best deals of all time?
Sure. Of all times, a toughie.
Yeah.
Let's see. I can tell you, I can go over the one I said earlier just because it's top of mind. I mean, it's not all time. I mean, we just did one with a student in California that it's a $200,000 deal. We just did a video on it. So on YouTube, but I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I just know the killer on a financing deal he put together. I'll do a simple lower end one. Let's continue the story of the one where he said he was on for 219.9 and he said he would have got 183.9. So we did that. Okay, so
Mhm.
we start at 183.9 with no money down, and we set up $923 monthly principal payments for 48 months. Now we turn around and we put a tenant buyer in there with, say, I think it was like between 15 and 20 grand down. That's what we call payday number one. That's actually on the low side. Payday
Mhm.
number two is the difference between our 923 outgo to the seller for principal and the incoming from the tenant buyer of 1,500. Now there's an insurance payment in there too, but just gross numbers. Then you take that spread over 2 years, 4 years, and that's what we call payday two. So that spread is what, like 500 and change. And then payday three, when you cash that out at the end of the 48 months, is all of the principal pay down that you made for 4 years at 923 a month, plus the markup in the price. In this case, we went to 2.25. If you do the numbers on all 3 of those paydays I just gave you, that's the deal that I said is a 6-figure. I think it comes to like $127,000 on a 183.9 house, which for most conventional people go, I don't get it. Like, it's because of the principal pay down.
Mhm.
So that's not the all time. That's just a really cool owner financing 6-figure deal that's somewhat normal for how we do them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're getting rid of that, amortization schedule, I mean that
It's
principal
killer.
pay down goes fast.
Yeah, it's killer.
Um, no, it's a unique way. I've heard of like kind of the sandwich lease option before. That's super creative. So, who's your typical, end buyer? Is it someone that doesn't have perfect credit yet, or is trying to, own a home while they fix certain things and get better income?
Okay, typical would be a large percentage do need some credit repair. Could have been from death, divorce, job change, legitimate things, life events. A better buyer, that's the most percentage, but a better buyer and one we're getting better at attracting is that self-employed kind of like a sideline buyer that knows they're not bankable right now, but has a down payment and has decent credit, but perhaps they're not reporting all their income, they're self-employed. Those are great buyers. So all they need is some time to season their income. They already have the down payment. They already have the credit. Those are fantastic buyers. They're true buyers. They're not tenants that think someday they want to buy. Is a big difference.
Hmm. And they're just doing the cash out refinance, you know, first day they can typically.
Yeah, they'll go a couple, seasoning, as you know, it's going to take probably a couple of years depending on the program. But so they'll go 2 or 3 years and they'll get a conventional loan.
Hmm.
And again, that's nice because that's typically the person that 10 years ago you could do stated income, or maybe 12 years ago now. And the stated income programs exist now, but they're super expensive. If you can find them, they're like 8 and 9%. So most conventional buyers won't do that. So they're going to the bank, they hadn't bought in 10 years, and they have a rude awakening. I got 50 grand, I'm ready to buy a house, but I can't do stated income anymore. What happened? So then now they need 2 years of seasoning. So they're great. They'll plop the 50 down to you instead as the investor. That goes in your pocket. And then you just let them season out their time frame or the new job or whatever they have to season, and then they get a conventional loan, no problem at the end of that.
Great. So those payments to you, are they paying principal and interest, or is it just principal?
Neither. Good question. When a tenant buyer goes in a house, even though we have principal pay down, when we do a rent to own with them, they are simply making a lease payment until they get their mortgage, or else there's no incentive for them to go get a mortgage. So they don't get credit for principal.
Nice. And it fills a space. It's kind of like, the hard money question, or, expensive financing or something. It fills, a space. It has a need. So
there's no question. You've got people that, and I could give you story after story, but on the buyer side of things, you got people that literally thought because of whatever happened in their life event, they were done. Like they couldn't buy a house again, like in tears. So when we show them this pathway, it's such a super win. And then the seller, usually same scenario, they're looking for the best scenario from us. So usually you come out of that transaction, unlike a lot of the conventional deals where people are clawing at each other, you come out of that transaction saying, okay, as an investor, I did well. Buyer just made their whole, generations I just changed in their family by helping them do this. And then the sellers are super happy too, because they get what they want out of the deal. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, you're paid in the direct, amount of problems that you solve.
Yep.
I just butchered that quote, but
I know where you're going.
Yep. But no, that's great. Chris, you want to tell us more about the books you've written and website, best podcast to reach you on? You said you had, and we can.
Yeah, I'm a big, and thank you for bringing it up. I'm a big believer in free, so you can just go to smartrealestatecoach.com. There's a free webinar if you want to deal with listening to me for another 55 minutes. It's pretty content rich. You can't, go learn how to make $1 million in an hour, but it'll point you in the right direction for you to do some more due diligence. Our YouTube channel, which is just put Smart Real Estate Coach in YouTube. There's deal structure videos galore in there. I think there's over 100. So you could literally go look at different deals for free and learn some of the nuances that go on. Our show that you mentioned is smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com. And I don't know, Scott, if you want, I have the new rules book I could actually give to your listeners. And I'm saying the hard copy, we ship it out if they just say they heard you and I on your show. If you want me to give you that link, I'm happy to do that. You can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, sounds great, Chris. You any links that you have? And you had a couple of good ones in there earlier too. So we'll get an email going, and I'll make sure I put that in the show notes.
Cool. That sounds great. So we'll put it in the show notes, and we'll offer all your listeners that book. We'll ship it. It's not one of those get a free book, but put your credit card in for shipping. We'll do it at our cost.
Thanks so much for listening to this show of the Book Club Interview with your host, Scott Hollister. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on the Book Club Interview.